One of the key things and one of the biggest challenges we face in the project environment is how to measure things. And what I always say is that it's really challenging. It's technically impossible to control things if you cannot measure. And there is a concept that for me I like very much, because I know that sometimes for example, you are building an internal IT software. And how you can measure clearly the performance and the benefits of that project. And this is why it's so critically important that you know exactly what success looks like for you. Because sometimes you say, I want to improve user experience. But what is that? What is this improvement? What you will measure? How do you plan to measure that? There is a book that I like very much from Doug Huber called How to Measure Anything. And it's very important because some of the aspects are, I would say, pretty much intangible. And one of the techniques I use when I'm facing something that is really challenging to measure, even before I create the index, I create the key results, what do I do? One tool that I use that helps me a lot to understand and try to figure out which kind of measurement I can put in place when it's not very evident. For example, if you are building a high-rise building, to sell it, it's, I would say, quite easy, because okay, I want to make X, Y, or Z profit on each apartment. I want to sell them, and at the end I want to make X millions. And it's more tangible because you can quantify it in an easier way. For example, if you're doing a new feature in your software and you want to sell this feature as an add-on and charge for that, then it's easy to. And I'm talking here about the benefits. But let me give you an example. You decide to pay an MBA course for your project manager or a team member. How do you measure, I would say, the X dollars you will spend on having him or her at the school vis-a-vis the benefit of that knowledge to you? And this is where I want to show you the 5 whys. And the 5 why will guide you, and it will give you a perspective of the root cause and the root meaning. And you need to understand and try to measure. Something like, why I'm paying this? And then you have the first answer. And then, why this first answer? Then you go to the second. And you go deeper to understand. For example, why I'm paying this? Oh, because I want to stimulate him or her to stay in my company in the next 2 years, because this is the length of the MBA. Okay, good. And then I say, why do you want him or her to stay 2 years attached to your company? Then you may say, oh, because it's very hard to find a replacement. And then I go here, why it's very hard to find a replacement? Because salaries are on the rise. And if I replace this person, I will have to pay more. Did you see where I'm trying to get in? I'm trying to reach a point that you say, okay, how much more we are talking about? And then you may say, oh, if I'm paying the current person 5 and I will pay the new person 7, then does this 2 additional cost? I'm not considering the recruitment process. Do they justify the MBA or not? And please, this is just a didactical example. I'm not saying this is true, but this is exactly how your mind, and I do this many times when I'm struggling to identify the value. When I'm struggling really, for example, when I'm doing something and I'm doing, I would say, something in a project that there is no direct profit line on that. I'm doing something, that is a marketing campaign and an institutional marketing campaign. And I say, how do I measure this value to my company? Most of the time is using the concept of the 5 whys. And these will help me in some ways to craft, I would say, the first draft of what would be a reasonable index for my project and a reasonable OKRs for the results of my project.